Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and our continuing series, the Unported playlist, where I take a look at some of my favorite unported arcade games of all time. And today we're taking a look at the Crystal of Kings, released in 2001 by Brezzasoft. And they were a small group of ex-SNK developers that worked on King of Fighters 2001, as well as Metal Slug 4 and 5. Before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we have a Patreon link down below as well. I absolutely love the Crystal of Kings, and it's mostly for the presentation style, because you can see right off the bat, this is using all pre-rendered assets. It looks like an enhanced version of Donkey Kong, except obviously there's no Donkey Kong, and there is no Diddy as well. But I do enjoy this game for its look. It has a certain appeal to it that looks completely different than anything else we were seeing in arcades. But unfortunately, because this came out in 2001, it obviously looks quite dated. And this runs on the Brezzasoft Crystal System, which was basically a cartridge-based arcade board, very similar to the Neo Geo, but it is exceedingly rare. It's one of the rarest arcade boards you're going to find. This game was only released in Japan and in limited numbers. Honestly, I couldn't even put a price to this game because I could not find of an example selling in the last few years. So if you do see one for sale, expect it to be very high priced. If you're super into it, definitely pick it up, but I would honestly say emulating it is the way to go. But just because it's rare doesn't mean it's not worth checking out. I will say that this plays a lot more like old school beat 'em ups. This is more like a Golden Axe than anything more advanced mechanic wise. You move left, you move right, you attack the enemy, you use some special magic moves. If you played one beat 'em up, you definitely know exactly how the Crystal of Kings works. But I just love the atmosphere and the graphical style and the music. It has a really unique look and feel and gameplay to it that it's just a special game that you probably never encountered before. And I'm assuming most people are going to leave comments below saying that they never even heard of the Crystal and Kings. So if you have heard of this before, let me know. Let me know if you've played it. But I do love that they have this giant war elephant that just falls down to the side and fades away, and we get the first crystal. Now this game does have a morality system, and I accidentally killed one of the villagers at the beginning. You want to just attack the enemies and make sure that no innocents get hit, because that's going to affect how the ending of your game works. And you'll see here that I'm picking up these magic potions. Those are going to become very important, especially in boss battles, because boss battles are hard, and if you save up your magic for the right time, you can really start knocking chunks off their life bar really easily. So it is a little bit of a resource management game as well, and I will show you some of the other characters involved in this capture, because there are more than one, and we're playing as the Leung King right now. I'm sure that means something different to Japanese players than it does me, because I just think of it as a king of the things we use to breathe. But again, I love how this game constantly changes its environments. Everything is pre-rendered, but every stage feels unique and different. It's got a different colorway, it's got a different vibe, it's got different music. It's always changing and pivoting to make it feel like you're seeing something new and something special. I will say it's not the hardest game in the world, it's not the easiest, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being basically a free game to play and 10 being it mugs you in the alley to steal your quarters. I'd put this right in the middle. But it's just a fun beat 'em up, and it's a rare game, and that's a lot of what Unported Playlist is about. Is I love talking about rare games that people may never have encountered before, because obviously this is Unported. It never made it to US arcades, and it never really even made it to too many arcades in Japan, because the Crystal System was a really interesting platform where there was only 5 games made for it, and it was never really a hit whatsoever. If I could ever get my hands on one, I would do a teardown of it, because the chipset that it uses is quite unique and interesting, but don't ever expect that, because unless someone wants to let me borrow a Crystal System, I'm probably not going to be able to show it to you. But I also love the fantasy soundtrack in this game, so go ahead and listen for like 30-45 seconds, and I'll come back and tell you more why the Crystal of Kings is the Donkey Kong of fantasy beat 'em ups. But enjoy. I just can't get enough of that fantasy rock guitar, and I will say that the soundtrack, while great, sounds a little bit muffled, and because I've never played an actual Crystal system, I can't say if that's endemic to the emulation, because I'm playing this on MAME, or if that's part of the original hardware. I'm assuming it's part of the hardware, but we really don't know, because like I said, you will probably never find a Crystal board for sale. I don't think there's many out there, and I'm sure they're in the hands of hardcore arcade collectors. But just moving forward, I love the enemy design. We have these eyes of horror that definitely look like something out of the Dungeons and Dragons franchise, and this game somehow feels like an unofficial sequel to the Dungeons and Dragons game on the CPS2. Tower of Doom and Shadow over Mystara, these games have a similar vibe, but these troll soldiers, I love how big the sprites are, I love how they're pre-rendered, I love all the frames of animation, they just have a really nice look to them, and I get that for a 2001 arcade game, this was definitely aged and antiquated, but I think a lot of what the Crystal system was trying to do is be a successor to the Neo Geo, and of course, one of the aspects of the Neo Geo that arcade operators love so much is it wasn't a super expensive arcade board to buy and operate, because in 2001 with all the 3D stuff on the market, I think those systems cost a lot more brand new. But you see we're using a different character here. They all play relatively similarly, and you'll see that we have these fairies that are following us. There's going to be locked cages in each stage, more than one sometimes, and if you break them and pick the fairy up, they will follow you and basically become your partners. And they don't do a ton of damage, but they do enough chip damage that it's going to be beneficial for you, especially in boss fights. Sometimes the game can feel slightly unfair. Fighting the harpies here, and it says harpies but there is only one, they get into the sky so much that it can sometimes be hard to attack, because a lot of the flying enemies are much harder to hit than their ground-based counterparts. So every once in a while the game might irritate you slightly, but of course we're not putting real quarters in it, so honestly, what does it matter? But as we get further into the game, I love what it does with the colors. You know, we went from daytime, then we had that orange of golden hour. Now we're into this red, almost sunset look as we're going further into the underworld. And you get these army of darkness looking skeletons with swords and shields. And these Hades keepers as well, which look like kind of like flying, for lack of a better term, dragonflies. The enemy design is just spectacular in this game, and there are a lot of variety of enemies. You're not going to be fighting the same thing over and over again, and a lot of times that's one of my complaints with beat 'em ups, is after the second stage you've seen basically every enemy design that exists. In the Crystal of Kings, you're going to be getting a lot of diversity in who you're fighting. The only downside of Crystal and Kings, talking about the fighting, is it is very simplistic. You only have a few moves, you only have a few magic attacks based on how high that magic bar in the top left corner, the yellow portion, is. So it's not like it's the deepest combat ever, but it's more of a spectacle game. It's a game you want to watch, animate, and move. You want to see what's coming next. You want to see what level you're going to moving forward. So in that respect, it does have a lot of flair, and it's definitely something you should play, especially if you like beat 'em ups, because like I said earlier, I'm assuming most people will never have heard of this game before. But why didn't it get ported? It's really simple. It came out in 2001, and this wouldn't have been great for a home port. The Crystal system has a lot of unique and interesting silicon on it that probably would have been hard to port to a home console, because in 2001, you could have put this on the GameCube, you could have put it on the PlayStation 2, or you could have put it on the Xbox. And can you imagine anybody buying a game like this then? It's just not what people wanted. Had this come out later, it would have been a great sort of on-demand game. Something like Xbox Live Arcade could have supported it pretty well, but you understand why it didn't happen. I will say the platforming is actually quite fair. I shouldn't have jumped there, but as far as arcade beat-em-ups that have platforming elements are concerned, this one is one of those games where if you miss the jump, it's honestly on you and not the game's fault. But even moving forward here, we have these wizards that come out. I just love the sound effects. I love how they animate. This game is just beautiful to look at. Sure, it looks old for 2001, but if this game came out in 96 or 97, people would have been lauding it the same way that they talked about Donkey Kong Country when that came out. But short of that, that is the Crystal of Kings. It's an awesome beat 'em up with a really unique visual style. And as far as the games I've talked about on Unported playlist, this is probably top 10 rarest of them all. Like I said, if you ever see a Crystal Kings board for sale and it's for a decent price and you're interested in really rare arcade games, I highly recommend you pick it up. Short of that, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. We'll be back next Sunday with more Unported. We'll have the full playthrough of this Monday after next, and we'll have videos throughout the week as well. Short of that, I wonder what's up the stairs. You'll have to find a week to find out. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.